I shouldn't even be dignifying the trailer of The One Ring season 3 with a reaction video. But if this gives me an opportunity to shit on it, then yes, I will take care of it. This is the last picture of Rahim Khan, and late last night, I guess, yeah, the trailer for the third and thankfully final season of Amazon Prime's The One Ring. No, sorry, The Ring of Power. Sorry, I always get this wrong. I don't know. I think that's just how much I disregard the show. So that premiered last night, and I've been meaning to do a video that also incorporates what Andy Serkis, of course, Gollum, who is directing The Hunt for Gollum, said recently, and I think this is the perfect opportunity. Okay, but first of all, of course, the trailer. Very underwhelming, as expected, as has the entire series. I mean, so far, 2 seasons of it have just been a half-baked attempt at making literally a hash of source material that could have been fantastic in the right hands. Unfortunately, I do not know what the creators behind the show were aiming for, because while clearly there was a vacuum after Game of Thrones concluded, and everyone and their aunt wanted to jump on that sort of medieval fantasy bandwagon and have like the next big thing on their hands. Amazon, despite spending apparently $1 billion on the first season, just really couldn't deliver. And like, as a fan, it sucks that, and I've spoken about this at length before, but as a fan, it sucks that we just haven't had anything worthy of Tolkien's, tone. The show in no way is should even bear the name of Tolkien or the Rings of Power or something. It's just like some lame ass attempt at fantasy or whatever. Okay, the trailer. Okay, so the trailer starts off, of course, with Sauron. And while I did not mind the actor himself, we've always seen we've always seen Sauron, of course, helmed as he was, remember, sort of in The Lord of the Rings. And of course, in the Silmarillion and all of the other things, we knew that, there was sort of like a human form to him. But for some reason or the other, seeing this actor sort of with not the helm, but that sort of pointed crown that he has, and in the armor, I mean, it kind of worked when he played that sort of whisperer character that the elves even referred to, and who was, of course, poisoning the mind of Celebrimbor. Yes. And it kind of worked then. But seeing him here right now in this sort of form, especially when they are in Mount Doom with Celebrimbor's hammer. I hope I'm getting the name. Yeah, it is Celebrimbor, right? You forgive me if I'm mixing it up, because I think I was on Celeborn and sorry. He's holding it aloft. And of course he's forging the One Ring. I don't know. It just it didn't work for me. It kind of takes away from the mystery, of course. Because the thing is that, and the awe that we have in that sort of towering figure who descends upon the Last Alliance and fights, of course, Elendil and Gilgalad. Yeah, don't see it here. But wait, let's quickly get the trailer out for a second. And another thing that is almost, which is exactly, I think, that struck me while watching this, and perhaps lies at the heart of this adaptation, is you first start off, of course, with Sauron. He's doing his thing, and then sort of in voiceover, you have an orc explaining to what's it called, Galadriel, how he is crafting a one ring. And then there are other scenes where that same orc, the, for want of a better phrase, and I mean this in no disrespect, sort of the black elf, I have no idea what that character's name is, and Galadriel are sort of teamed up. Now, again, throughout this show, they've tried to humanize, for want of a better word or phrase, the orcs. And sort of you had an orc family, like the nuclear unit, mother, father, and baby orc, and sort of that orc turning on, that guy, I'm forgetting his name, the orc father, they keep on referring to him as, which is kind of cool. Not them turning on him, but was kind of cool them showing how the antecedents to the orcs, because of course Morgoth took elves, corrupted them, turned them into orcs eventually to torture and sort of corruption and all of that stuff. And how this one, I'm forgetting his name, still retained a lot of his elvishness, but how because this orc was so concerned about his family, he was still, that's why he turned on this guy and sided with Sauron. I don't think this is that old, of course, but they tried to do this. And while there is nothing in the books to suggest that orcs are anything other than sort of a creation of the black arts, like that they are just evil and that that's all they've ever known. I was completely on the fence about this because the thing is, I was like, what stops them from sort of having an orc romance or having like sort of equal rights for orcs, where sort of like, a Galadriel type character suddenly after buddy copying with one of these orcs, as we see in this video, um, starts advocating for like, sort of leniency and mercy towards orcs. I mean, it just goes against what Tolkien maybe perhaps envisioned, because again, there's very little that, I mean, I'm no Tolkien scholar, but I mean, again, having read most everything, I don't think I've ever seen them humanized in this way. Or them even like even turning on their master, like the way that he's sort of conspiratorially saying, oh, he's crafting the one ring. No, a lot of no's. You're going to hear a lot of that, a lot of protestation, a lot of being incensed by what these people have done. Okay, the one ring failed. I'm only getting this so that I'm accurate in what I'm saying, although I remember most of it. But nonetheless, okay, you of course get to see the Nazgul. Now that's interesting, and I would like to see how they handle it. Of course, I don't think they do a great job with it, but again, how stupid of me! I wrote the Wondering trailer where it's the rings of power. I don't know why I keep on doing this. Okay, we get to see the Nazgul. We get to see their sort of bat-like leathery steeds. We see the Nazgul in several scenes now. And why I said it was interesting because, of course, these were 9 men doomed to die, and they were corrupted, each given a ring. And we get a hint of that where Sauron's character says, I don't know, the shadow is coming, and would you like to rise up with it or something like that? Some stupid line. Of course, a lot of the dialogue throughout the series has been pretty bad, right? And I just hate how everyone is overpronouncing the shit out of stuff. Sorry for doing that. But it just, whenever Galadriel speaks and she pronounces a name, or for example, where Elrond speaks, and they're like just taking the name of somebody, they kind of make it sound the way, like, when people who are, Spanish speakers or Latin Americans, and how they go from just saying Lin-Manuel Miranda to Lin-Manuel Miranda. You know how they do that? I just hate how they do that in this. Just say it conversationally. Whatever. Okay. Shut up. We see Mordor, we see the Fortune of the One Ring, right? Okay, this was one scene that I just thought was so ridiculous. There's a dance sequence. Because there, of course, we have Galadriel reunited with, of course, her husband, or at least betrothed by this time. I'm not sure if they were married at this time. Celeborn. And then there's this whole sort of elven dance sequence. We didn't need that. I'm sorry. I mean, the only time I can remember sort of a dance sequence, or at least merriment even described, is, The Hobbit, when they come upon the woodland elves and there's like having like sort of a party. I don't remember if dancing was ever mentioned. Not to say that sort of, okay, I'm sure the elves dance. It's nothing to like hold against them, but whatever. The Dark Lord is on the brink of crafting a new power. Of course, I like how churlish and sort of working class the orcs are meant to sound. All right. There you have the Nazgul again, and in a very sort of scene borrowed from what's it called thing, uh, The Lord of the Rings, where they're being hunted in the Shire, and you have them hide underneath that tree. So you have a similar scene here, and in this case, you have again that black elf Galadriel and her holding a sword knife to the orc's throat, so he does not speak out. The Nazgul apparently is hunting them. Of course, we have Gandalf, his hair, and then you have played by what's it called? That Irish actor. So now this is a wizard from the east. I mean, sort of, you don't know who he yet is. They have not revealed it. Now, is he Sauron? I'm not sure because in this his beard has visibly started to gray or whiten. So I wonder if this character is thing, although he does say ominously Middle East. Middle East? Sorry. Middle Earth will burn. More Nazgul, we of course see their winged beasts. Then we of course turn to Numenor. This is also going to be interesting because in the third season, apparently, if they're covering all of this stuff, because this is meant to build up to the last alliance and sort of the vanquishing of Sauron. So along the way, Ar-Pharazôn and the Númenóreans are meant to, of course, come to Middle Earth, bring Sauron to heel. They then take him back to Numenor, where he, of course, manipulates, incenses, whatever, them to, of course, sail to the Undying Lands, which, of course, seals their fate. The Númenóreans are destroyed, except, of course, for the handful that Elendil, Eol, the refugees, if you will. Celeborn, okay, cool, you're there. There's a bit of romance, there's a bit of elven sort of Frenching. Um, Mount Doom figures greatly in a lot of this. Then you have a scene where the Nazgul come to Moria, and I think they're perhaps trying to persuade or intimidate Durin, whose axe handle is clearly far too big for his dwarven hands. Okay, what else? Yeah, yeah, the buddy cop scene, the buddy where they're teaming up. So you have orc teaming up with the two elves. Right. Then what I'm assuming is a shot of the Last Alliance. Of course, this is the Last Alliance between men and elves. They're just standing about in the field. In no way, if this is that same thing, where of course they besiege Mordor for several years, if this of course is that, in no way compares to the visuals that Peter Jackson had in the very first minutes of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Okay. What else do we have? We have the shipwright. What is his name? Sorry, forgetting this. Um, more Nazgul. Right, there he is in Mount Doom, crafting the One Ring. Okay, is that what am I doing here? And there he is with the One Ring. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, this is coming out in November. So all in all, am I even gonna watch this? I think I'll watch it just for like, just as a background thing while I'm doing work or something like that. I'm not gonna take this seriously because there's nothing about this entire show that I've ever taken seriously. Um, and I'm so glad now I think we can move on to something else. So glad somebody finally had the gumption um, to say this. Okay, I've been saying this for a long time. I've been arguing this for a long time. And that is, of course, how the Lord of the Rings became woke, right? And clearly that was demonstrated in the first season of thing, what's it called? The Rings of Power, where you had, as I've just been mentioning, where you had um, black elves, you had Asian elves, you had black dwarves, you had that one actress, Nazneen Bonyadi, who is of Iranian descent. She was cast as a human, which okay, kind of somewhat makes sense because the thing is that the Easterlings and then the Southrons, um, again, while not explicitly described as being brown or Mediterranean or anything like that. It's kind of hinted at that. So she could have possibly been that. But again, in nowhere in the books, I think, oh, and don't forget the Harfoots, where you had Lenny Henry as a hobbit, a Harfoot. In nowhere in the books, I think, has it ever been described as you had, elves that were anything other than typically Caucasian, right? Fair skinned, blonde, brown haired, black haired, even redheaded. Well, other than that, I don't think dwarves and elves have ever been described as anything but these things. And I'm so glad somebody finally had the gumption, the courage to say this. And that is, of course, Andy Serkis, who I mentioned earlier on. Andy Serkis defends lack of diversity in Lord of the Rings cast. So here he was, of course, talking about because they just started production on the Hunt for Gollum, which is meant to release Christmas next year, 2027. So he says, um, where, where is his actual quote? Okay, Circus not before answering, and it's clear that it's something he has given a lot of thought to. Okay, every major cast member announcement date to date has been wiped. Jamie Dornan, Anya Taylor-Joy, Kate Winslet, and Leo Goodall, as well as returning stars including Elijah Wood and Cynthia McKenna. The question is why? It's the BBC is asking. Circus nods his head before answering, and it's clear that it is a subject he's given a lot of thought to. Tolkien himself was influenced a lot by Norse mythology. There's a lot of that feeling. The Shire feels very much like a very, very white, he tails off and pauses before continuing with greater certainty. They are not very concerned about what goes on beyond the borders of the Shire, but they know they don't want people coming in. Yes, there has been criticisms. This particular film is somewhat acknowledging that. But I don't think we will be doing a politically correct, just casting for the sake of casting and ticking boxes version of the film. So it's where relevant, basically. So yeah. Now this is something that again I've mentioned here a couple of times on the last picture show, but also sort of in discussion with friends and whatnot. It is very clear that sort of the sandbox, first of all, the inspirations that Tolkien was dealing with was largely, or I would say predominantly European, right? Norse mythology, Beowulf, and what's it called, Siegfried, and all of that stuff, right? Germanic, what's it called, Northern European. A lot of that stuff was influencing him when he was Norse, was influencing him when he was writing that. Again, I'm not a scholar, but from what little I do know, like Beowulf and those things, there were clearly like no mention of even people who were like even Mediterranean. And by Mediterranean, I mean, Greek, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, people slightly tanned, even curly haired, there was no mention of these people. So if that's like his inspirations, and of course, through the languages he created and all of that stuff, that is again a clear sort of continuation of what he knew, what he read, what he learned, what he taught. It's then safe to say that then that is the sandbox that he created, and these are the characters he's made, in playing with and doing all of that stuff. I mean, the Shire is clearly rural England, you know. Um, like for example, the Rahirim are like meant are sort of like a mix of like Vikings and whatnot. There's Celtic inspirations. There's so much stuff going on in there. So why just because? And again, I don't like to sort of blame woke or wokeism or diversity for like sort of all the problems in the world. But at least when it comes to something like this, where it's very clearly stated that like, this is it. I don't think that we must be sort of forcing upon this story the inclusion of, and again, not minorities in white countries, but I mean, sort of, it's, us people of color, as they say, kind of outnumber the whites. So it's not right to sort of force this upon a story where A, it doesn't even make sense. B, it reeks of tokenism. Because again, you have that one black elf, right? Again, he was created for the show. He is of no particular worth or standing or relevance or import. So why even have this character? Like if you really wanted to strike a blow, then they had the Numenorian queen. She's black. Um, okay, you're making a point. Okay. Uh, but none of the other major characters are in any way, shape, or form black, brown, yellow, whatever. They're all white. So, like, again, it reeks of tokenism. It doesn't make any sense if you are to sort of, with respect to the lore. If people are to argue that, yes, well, it is a fantasy thing, because again, recently there was a lot of controversy regarding the Odyssey and the casting of, for example, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen and other Himesh Patel as Odysseus' second, blah blah blah. So in that case, they were like, oh, Homer was not very specific as to any of their descriptions or skin colors or whatever. But at least when it comes to Tolkien, he was very specific about these things. And that's why, in many of the cases, the colored characters are not even canon, like the Lenny Henry character, the Harfords. I mean, I don't even remember any stories. I mean, they're mentioned the Harfords, but that's just about it, right? Um, of course, they the whole point of introducing them was to create like sort of a base for why Gandalf likes Hobbit so much. Um, but again, any characters of relevance or any characters actually mentioned, none of them are black or anything like that. So why even do it? And yes, I am 100% in agreement with Serkis that it shouldn't just be casting for casting's sake. It doesn't make any sense. You know? Um, I mentioned this before as well. Remember not remember, like it's ongoing. In what's it called? It's called Dance of Dragons. What's it called? House of the Dragon. So for example, the sea snake, what is his name? That family called? I'm forgetting, but they're meant to be like sort of from old Valeria. And in the books, of course, they're white. Um like Targaryens, but in this they turn them into black. They turn them black. Considering that George R. R. Martin is still alive, and say for example, I'm not sure if there's he's commented on this, but say for example, they did run this by him and he okayed it, then yeah, it's his creation. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it, right? Do it. In the case of Tolkien, of course, he's long past. Christopher, his son, again, has passed away. So I don't know if there's sort of any guardian to sort of maintain the integrity of this stuff. But I mean, if you are going to make such a casting decision, then I would say that it's worth respect. Then, if they're alive, asking them. And if not, then respecting the original work. Don't just do it because, labor policy demands that you must have, diversity, or sort of woke Twitter or whatever, or social media demands it. No, it should make sense. Like, it didn't make any fucking sense when you had a white cast in The Last Airbender, in M. Night Shyamalan's, what's it called, adaptation. So I'm so glad that Netflix stuck to its guns and cast an entirely accurate Asian cast, because of course it is an Asian like show. Who would be up in arms if Aang was white, as I was when they did it in the Lord of the Last Airbender? It didn't make any goddamn sense, right? Same here. In the Lord of the Rings, yes, it's sacred to a lot of us. You do not need this. And okay, you did it. At least make a good show. You didn't, it was terrible. It is terrible. And I think that this trailer is evidence of even more shit coming our way. Let's just wait and see what happens in November. That's the one. No, that's not the One Ring. That's the Rings of Power.